Now, one person who has written a powerful piece against the lack of leadership we're seeing across the board is the former Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions for the Commonwealth, and he was also a member of the National Crime Authority, Mark LeGrand. And he joins me live now. Mark, thank you very much for your time. Now, you've written an incredible piece in The Australian. You have shown leadership on this. You said, while this Jew hatred is accelerating and hurtling towards a disaster, there is scant leadership to combat it. And you've said that to avoid a future tragedy, Albanese must act with commitment, vigour and courage. What do you think the responsibility is here for the Prime Minister?
Well, thank you, Sharri. The Prime Minister's responsibility is clear. Under the Australian Constitution, he leads the government. And as Prime Minister, he's required to deliver peace, order and good government. As part of good government is upholding the rule of law. The rule of law requires that all our people be treated equally. And it's clear that he's failing in that duty. Yes, since the horrific events of the 7th of October last year, 9 months have elapsed in which there's been accelerating abuse of the Jewish citizens of our country. They've suffered horrific abuse, they've suffered violence, they've suffered vandalism to their businesses, they've suffered having their children excluded from university campuses, and effectively nothing has been done. The government, beyond a few platitudes, has done nothing. The police, state and federal, I'm not aware of any substantial charges that have been laid in that time. And as a result, there's no deterrence. The activity is green-lighted and it continues and accelerates and becomes more serious. Unless something happens soon, some real tragedy is going to occur. And I'm not just speculating, because Australia's faced situations like this in the past. And for instance, with the issue between the Croats and the Serbs in the 60s, 70s. But then leadership was given from the Whitlam government and Attorney General Murphy, who said, you do not bring your ancient hatreds to this country.
Yes.
And set about a strong and effective program of law enforcement to stamp it out. It took some time, but eventually that occurred.
Very powerful response there. You're worried that a tragedy might happen. You say that we're seeing platitudes instead of any substantial policy action. Why do you think, I mean, you've been involved, Mark LeGrand, in royal commissions, in senior investigative task forces. Why do you think we haven't seen law enforcement use the laws that are available to them to actually stop the violence that's being unleashed on our streets?
It staggers me. I've worked with law enforcement in various capacities for 4 decades. And some of the finest people I've met and some of the most dedicated have been law enforcement officers. And I just can't understand how for the last 9 months, effectively, not a finger has been lifted to pursue the people who are perpetrating these actions against our Jewish Australians. The horrific hate preaching that's coming out of Western Sydney, it's clearly contrary to law, but nothing happens. Now, I've worked sufficiently closely with police, from police commissioners down to officers in the field, to know that that is not their determination. They're not going to wholesalely decide not to enforce the criminal law. They're getting a message from up the line, from government, through the police minister, through the premier, or through whoever is the senior public servant carrying the message, that they're not to action these laws. The police are not going to make that determination themselves. The police, left to their own devices, would enforce the law. But it's clear to me that, and they'll deny it vehemently, and you won't find any record of it. It'll be verbally delivered, but I can assure you that's what's happening. And you ask why? Well, I can speculate as you can speculate, but I've heard people speculate that it's because of the Muslim vote in certain electorates. I hope we're not become so venal that that's the case. I've heard that, it's the whole mantra of the neo-Marxists of oppress and oppressor flying from our universities. I don't know. I do know that there is a dark anti-Semitic side of the union movement, and that was clear from the ACTU's statement on the 22nd of April. That was really quite scandalous in the way it was slanted against what happened on the 7th of October last year and what happened since. But I can only speculate as you can only speculate.
But still a powerful statement from you that you believe law enforcement would like to take action, and there's been a message given to them not to take action. Mark LeGrand, just before you go, I want to ask you about, what I spoke about in the introduction to your interview, the anti-Semitism on university campuses, how it's allowed to go unchecked, the capitulation to extremist groups. I mean, Mark, we have seen Iran and Hamas back in these university protesters globally. I mean, what do you think of the inaction from university leadership that we're seeing on this matter?
Well, what I saw come out of Sydney University today is insane. No, I withdraw that. Is sinister and it's treacherous. I mean, let's see what power you've given to people influenced by Hizb ut-Tahrir, declared terrorist organisations in other countries. And as you say, the support that these protests are getting from Hamas and the greatest state sponsor of terrorism, Iran. And the agreement is that they'll be disclosing details of defence and security-related research and investments. One has to wonder, what's happened to our country? This is just insane.
It is indeed. Mark LeGrand, thank you for speaking out. Thank you for caring about this issue. That is one of the best interviews, one of the strongest interventions in this public debate that I've seen from such a credible and highly regarded figure. Thank you very much for coming on this program tonight in this first interview. Really appreciate it. And I hope you will continue speaking out and that your colleagues will do the same.
I hope so too. Thanks, Sharri.